Well, it's actually appropriate we do this at lunch because I can tell you one of Barbara's favorite things to do is to enjoy good food. So consider that also part of this experience as well. And I want to say thank you to Bill and Tanya and Karen for the invitation and opportunity to remember our friend and colleague Barbara Huberman. At the outset, I would like to recognize that Barbara's daughter, Amy Bucher, is here as well. And Amy, again, I want to say thank you to you for sharing your mother with us. And also thank you for allowing me to offer this tribute to her today. So in preparing for this time, I found myself wondering what I might do. And I was reflecting on a piece that I wrote just 12 days before Barbara left us on May 17th of this year. And I decided that I wanted to share a modified version of that as a tribute as we remember her today. In the U.S., May is National Teen Pregnancy Prevention Month. And since it first began in 1991 in North Carolina, National Teen Pregnancy Prevention Month has taken root and grown throughout the country. As a result, hundreds, if not thousands, of organizations and communities throughout the United States seize upon the annual moment the National Teen Pregnancy Prevention Month offers to rally their communities to reduce adolescent pregnancy and promote adolescent sexual health. Articles and editorials in support of teen pregnancy prevention are run in newspapers. Faith communities conduct services that include a focus on sexual responsibility and the value of parent and child communication about sex. Mayors and even governors sign proclamations, and special forums are held as part of National Teen Pregnancy Prevention Month. But the month of May is Barbara Huberman's month. Barbara Huberman, as the CEO of the Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention Council, now Campaign of North Carolina, created Teen Pregnancy Prevention Month in 1991 when she relocated to Washington, D.C. in 1995 to join the staff of Advocates for Youth. With permission of APPCNC, she brought Teen Pregnancy Prevention Month with her and launched it as a national initiative. Every year since then, beginning about this time of year, Barbara began getting ready for the upcoming National Teen Pregnancy Prevention Month with new materials, and as recently as 2011, an updated planning guide. Barbara was one of the closest friends and colleagues I've ever had. I met her for the first time in 1995 at a conference sponsored by Advocates for Youth in Washington, D.C., just as she was beginning her tenure there. I'm not really sure when I became friends with Barbara. It just seems that from the very beginning, we had always been friends. In 1999, after pestering me incessantly for 2 years, Barbara convinced me to go on a European study tour that she had put together for people working in the field of adolescent sexual health and teen pregnancy prevention. It was a remarkable experience, and several of you at this conference were participants in one of those study tours as well. And I'm just curious, how many of you in this room participated in the European study tour that Barbara put together with Advocates for Youth? If you did, would you just please stand where you are if you are able? There's quite a few of us in this room. Thank you. It was a remarkable experience, and not only did several participate, but in the year that I participated, there was a video that was taken that documented that experience. And 15 years later, the thing that is remarkable to me, amazing, is that same video, now 15 years old, continues to fascinate people by the transformational findings that study undug. It was really an amazing experience. Barbara was the reason I relocated from my home state of Iowa to Washington, D.C. She was instrumental in my recruitment and hiring at Advocates for Youth, and I've never quite figured out what Barbara saw in me that told her I'd be a good bet, but I'm glad she saw it. In my last conversation with Barbara, I got kind of an interesting clue about part of what she saw in me. On the first night that she entered hospice care, my spouse and I went to see her, and we stood next to her bed, And I had brought her a Diet Coke, which was typical of what I did when we would travel together. I would always get in before her, pick up the rental car. I would go and get a Diet Coke, as much ice as I could cram into a cup and fill it up, because I knew that if she didn't have a Diet Coke, we'd have to stop at a McDonald's or someplace, and then it would be several minutes while she argued with them about, no, I need more ice. And so we would lose this time. So I would come prepared with the Diet Coke, and this particular night I brought a Diet Coke to her, and I set it on the bed next to her, and I said, Barbara, I remembered your Diet Coke, I just didn't have a place to get the ice. And she laughed, and she turned to her best friend who was standing on the other side of the bed, and she said, see, just what I told you. Tom's like having a husband without complications. Now, my spouse had been out of the room at that moment, and I had never heard that before, and I go, what? And her friend looked up, and she said, yeah, Tom, that's what Barbara's always said to me. And about that time, the door opens, and my spouse is walking in, and her friend says, Barbara has always said you're like having a husband without complications. Now, that kind of caught my spouse by surprise. But we laughed, and it's one of the most precious memories now that I carry from that last opportunity to talk with Barbara. For nearly 8 years, I got to work side by side with her, and it was an incredible experience. And together, we worked in trying to strengthen and build adolescent sexual health and teen pregnancy prevention organizations throughout the U.S., help them to become higher performing organizations. In that time, we supported a number of organizations that Barbara had helped create in the first place, and together we also helped birth several new organizations. We collaborated to create the National Support Center for State Teen Pregnancy Prevention Organizations, and we started the State Organization Leadership Academy and Roundtable, an event that continues and which I finished facilitating only yesterday in New Orleans before joining this conference. We loved our work. We had great fun working together. The hours and days of travel together gave us lots of time to talk over dinner, in airports waiting on flights. In that moments, we learned so much from each other. Barbara has been a mentor to many people, including me, but she was also a lifelong learner. And in 2009, when I decided to inflict a doctoral program on myself, Barbara became one of my strongest supporters and loudest cheerleaders. We would often talk about my studies, and she would ask me to share with her what I was learning. We had a wonderful friendship and a working relationship, but even then, we didn't always agree. But you know what was really neat? Is that our friendship was so strong that even in those times of disagreement, it created the space for us to remain engaged with one another, disagree, and emerge stronger than ever as friends. But Barbara was more than a friend. She was a member of our family of choice, who was often with us for birthdays, weddings, and just for fun. With my family and many of our friends in common, we would go every year on Memorial Day weekend to Wolf Trap in Vienna, Virginia, to watch Garrison Keillor and perform a live performance of A Prairie Home Companion, one of her favorite things to do in the summer. We would unfold a blanket, unfold our chairs, have a potluck picnic, and settle in for the show. In February 2013, I left Advocates for Youth to complete my doctoral research and dissertation. At about the same time, Barbara received the diagnosis of leukemia. And though she fought it bravely and had been fiercely determined to beat it, she lost her battle on May 17, 2014. Since leaving Advocates for Youth, Barbara and I stayed as closely in touch as her illness allowed. For several months, we regularly would meet for dinner or lunch at our favorite diner in Rockville, Maryland. When she began a second round of intensive chemotherapy and had to go into isolation in early January of this year, we regularly communicated by email and text, but as the illness gained ground, the messages came less frequently. In one of the last messages I received from Barbara, Barbara asked two things of me. First, she asked me to represent her at the South Carolina Campaign to Prevent Teen Pregnancy, where she was being honored for her role in starting that organization. And then secondly, she asked if I would work with her daughter Amy and her son Mark to plan and lead a celebration of her life. On Wednesday, May 7th, my spouse and I traveled to Columbia, South Carolina to be there for Barbara. 1 week later, on the same day Barbara entered hospice care, I was able to pass the award on to her and have my last conversation with her. Slightly more than 2 weeks later, on June 3rd, it was my sad duty and yet profound honor to lead the celebration of her life in Washington as over 200 of her friends and family said goodbye, and I know some of you were there. The month of May also belongs to Barbara Huberman, as it will forever remain in our memory as the time when she chose to leave us. And I do believe, as so many things in Barbara's life, that that was her choice. It is my reflection on Barbara's life and professional contributions in preparation for that South Carolina event that inspired this tribute that was originally posted on my blog on May 5th. On that blog, I use it to write about a variety of things: community engagement, leadership, sustainability, so on and so forth. And there was much in Barbara's life and work that speaks to those issues. And one of the most important lessons I and many others have learned from Barbara is the difference that one person can make. There's a plenary presentation I saw Barbara do on a few occasions that really captured the essence of that message. Her presentation always ended with the famous Apple video that celebrated the power of one. Now, National Teen Pregnancy Prevention Day reminds us of the power of one person to make a difference, but Barbara also understood the power of shared leadership as well. She didn't believe that she could do it alone, and therefore, when the national campaign came along and said, could we do a special Teen Pregnancy Day within the month? And Barbara was very supportive of that. She made her ideas, her materials, and herself freely available to anybody that wanted to use them, and especially to those that were leading sexual health organizations across our country. National Teen Pregnancy Prevention Month was one of just many innovations that Barbara Huberman introduced to the field of adolescent sexual health. With each of them, she felt it was important that others embrace them and make them their own if they were to be successful. When I defended my dissertation, Barbara had intended to be there, but she couldn't due to her health. And on that day, my dissertation chair gave me a poem that she had written, the chair had written, that as soon as I read it, it immediately made me think of Barbara, and I wanted to share that with you now. When this dance started, you only had a vague understanding of the overall stage, and I agreed to lead. We took to the dance floor, took to our positions, and began, me leading, you tentatively following, and together making the way, slowly and surely with each turn around the floor. You found your footing, and soon your expertise and ability surpassed mine. You took the lead, and I became the follower. You found your feet. You gained not just experience, but expertise, and today you've established your leadership. For me, Barbara's belief in the power of one and the value of shared leadership had a profound impact. It led her to befriend and dance with a teen pregnancy prevention program developer and organizational leader she found in Iowa, freely sharing her insights, ideas, visions, dreams, and materials with him. It led her to entrust these to me with the hope and expectation that I would not just continue but extend some of her work. I've always seen this as a really challenging expectation. Yet I am honored to have been so trusted by Barbara and promised her that I will do all I can to honor her trust and belief in me. And that includes, I believe, affirming today to you, the next generation of leaders, something that I believe that Barbara would want to say to you herself. The art of social change requires the courage and power of one person to step up and then to intuitively step back at just the right time to share leadership with others in order to achieve the sustainable greater good. Thank you for the dance you have shared with all of us, Barbara. And thank you.